This presentation will give you a brief overview of the TPACK model. TPACK stands for Technological Pedagogical Content Knowledge. The basic idea is that teachers need a strong understanding of all three components in order to build an effective instructional program. Teachers need to understand their content and standards, as well as the types of practices that will provide students with understanding of that information and what types of technologies would best be fit for their instructional program. To give you a clearer understanding of those three components, I'd like you to watch the following video.
Here's TPACK in 2 minutes. For more information, visit tpack.org. So first we have to ask, what is it? Well, TPACK is a framework that combines three knowledge areas: our technological knowledge, content knowledge, and our pedagogical knowledge. And it looks at how they work together to increase student motivation and to make the content more accessible to students. We look at the content as the what. It's the subject matter we're teaching, like ecology, music, algebra, health, geometry, or art history, to name a few. Then we look at our pedagogical knowledge. It's the how. Every teacher has tools, so let's put them to use. Are we going to be using direct instruction? Will this be inquiry-based, group discussions? How are we going to make the content more accessible by the way we present it to our students? Then we look at selecting the appropriate technology because it's the partner. What tool will we select to make the content more accessible to the students while supporting the pedagogical strategy which we've identified will help to deliver this information to students? We must identify those support features to really help us use technology to reach our outcome. As we understand them individually, we can start to see overlaps. Our TP knowledge allows us to understand how we're making the content more accessible. Our TC knowledge allows us to identify the affordances of pairing the appropriate technology to the content. And our PC knowledge allows us to identify the affordances of pairing the appropriate pedagogical strategies with the content. TPACK comes from the overlapping in that center spot, or as we refer to it as the sweet spot, when all three knowledge areas work together. It's crucial to remember that surrounding this is the context. That's you and your students. This may look differently when you walk into classrooms because at the heart of TPACK is meeting students' needs.
So why TPACK? The most important thing for us to remember is that it's not just important to use technology, but we have to know what to do with it in terms of our instruction. When we're designing instruction, we really have to think about our students, our content, and what the big ideas are for that content. That will help us determine not only the best strategies for our students, but also the technology so that we can use it in a way that is beneficial. When we have that overlap, that's when we get to the meat, or as they described it, the sweet spot, where we are combining our content expertise, our knowledge of pedagogy, as well as what we think the best technology would be for that particular lesson or unit. This graphic provides the same information as the original TPACK Venn diagram, but it does in a way that might be a little clearer for some people. So if you look at that center square, you can see that that thoughtful interweaving of all three key sources is really the heart and soul of this idea or this model. So when we think about content knowledge, we're thinking about the subject matter, the facts, the information. When we think about technology, it's how you use that information in a way that is going to be meaningful and also outside of the regular realm of that brick and mortar classroom. But in the same way, you want to think about pedagogy so that you can pick best practices. When all three combine, we really have a strong 21st century program that is based on student understanding and not just technology. So the question of the week, how can you best use new technologies associated with your content objectives to promote student learning? For those of us that are still in the classroom, that has to be the driving force whenever we pick technology, and thinking about that at the beginning of the unit when you're designing your unit plans and figuring out what the big ideas are. Where does technology fall in that? And going back to the SAMR model, picking technology that doesn't just substitute but gets more into the modification and redefinition. When you're back in your classroom, you also want to think about how your pedagogical approaches might be framed to effectively integrate technology into content area instruction. So really staying in the center, all three things constantly interweaving, so that you are building a program that's not just going to have students sitting in front of their devices or only utilizing them to do research projects, but that really uses it in a way that students become masters of that content. So some quick guidelines, again, when you're thinking about content knowledge, what standards are being addressed in the lesson, what big ideas from the unit are being addressed here. When you're thinking about the pedagogical practices, what strategies can I use to make things a little clearer for my students? Where do I know they're going to fall or perhaps misinterpret information? What strategies can I use that can clear that up or foster deeper understanding? When you think about technology, what opportunities do I have now as a 21st century teacher that can transform the content and make sense to the learner? When you combine the technology and the pedagogical structure, you're going to think about what technology can be used to maximize teaching and learning. And finally, when all three components combine, how does technology support the objective and the pedagogical strategies being employed? So your next steps, I'd like you to read this journal about TPACK. It'll give you a clearer understanding. I think you'll walk away feeling like you really have a firm grasp on what it is. A lot of people understand SAMR, and for TPACK, sometimes it's the first time that we've heard about it. So this will give you that information you'll be able to transfer into your classroom and also explain to someone else. After you've done that, I'd like you to visit this Padlet. The link is at the bottom of this slide, or you can click the Padlet word, which is hyperlinked. And I want you to describe an activity or experience that you've had that would fit into the center of the TPACK image. That's where all three circles connect, where you're combining technology, pedagogy, as well as the content. Thank you very much. And if you're interested in seeing my references, you can see those right here.